Hey guys, it's Raul again, and today I'm going to be doing another monthly recommendations video. Monthly Recommendations is a group that was created by Trina from Between Chapters and Kayla. I will link both of their pages down below, as well as the Goodreads group for this group. Like all of you guys have known at this point, I've been doing this every single month, and for the month of December, the topic is fantasy. So our favorite fantasy series, standalones, whatever it may be, anything fantasy that we will recommend to you guys to read that we love. So yeah, let's just get started. Now the first fantasy book that I have to recommend for you guys is The Winter's Curse by Marie Radkowski. Now I've only read the first book in this trilogy. The third book comes out this year. I think it's in March, somewhere at the end of March. But this is a fantasy world that doesn't have magic. So it is about a girl who is the daughter of a general who is kind of given a choice at a certain age to either become part of the army or get married. She doesn't want to do either, and then ends up kind of rebelling and buying a slave, and it's this whole mess that happens after she buys a slave. I absolutely loved this one. This was a book that I devoured and read super quickly. I'm not a quick reader, and me reading this book as fast as I did says something about it. I really loved the writing. I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the political intrigue. The action, I loved it. The characters, it was just a great first book to a trilogy. So definitely check this one out if you haven't, if it's something that interests you. Definitely do. Like I said, it's different because it's fantasy, but there's no real magic or magic system or anything in there. But I absolutely loved it. Definitely recommend this one to check out. The next recommendation that I have for you guys is the Mortal Instrument series, the first one being City of Bones. And every other book in this series is a 6-book urban fantasy series that a lot of you guys definitely know about, by Cassandra Clare. I absolutely loved this series. I feel like I haven't really talked much about this series on my channel because I read it way before I started it, but I absolutely loved it. Definitely check this one out. This is a YA, like I said, urban fantasy series that a lot of you guys have heard about already, so I'm not really going to get into detail or synopsis. Definitely another recommendation from me to you guys if you haven't read it already. I know a lot of people really love The Infernal Devices, which is like a prequel trilogy to this one, but haven't read this one, so I still recommend you guys read this one if you've read The Infernal Devices. Like I said, I haven't read The Infernal Devices, definitely want to because I hear that it's better than this one, so if it's better than this one, it's going to be great. But I still recommend this one because I loved it so much. Definitely check it out. And the next series or book that I have to recommend to you guys is a book that I don't think I've talked about on this channel, and that is Witch and Wizard by James Patterson. Now this is a series, I feel like there are 5 books in this series so far. I've read the first 3 and own the first 3 in them. This is a series that I really enjoyed. I went in with very high expectations because I thought it was going to be one thing and it wasn't. But for those of you who have read James Patterson know that it's very fast paced. He doesn't really take his time with a lot of stuff. So if you guys like fast-paced books, definitely check out James Patterson. Because this is a really cool YA dystopian fantasy, urban fantasy. It's really weird because it takes place in like modern times, so it's more urban fantasy. But obviously by the title Witch and Wizard, it's more kind of high fantasy, but not too high fantasy. I don't know. It's really cool. I would still check it out. I really enjoyed this first one. Second one, not too much, but then the third one I really loved. Like I said, I haven't read the other books in this series, but the first 3 I've really enjoyed. And I don't think I've ever recommended anything from James Patterson before. So like I said, this is really fast-paced. The chapters are really short. The font's really big, so you can breeze through these books. Like I said, not too long. This is about a brother and a sister who kind of witness the death of their parents. They're taken away in the middle of the night, and then their parents are executed, and they start to find out that they are a witch and a wizard, that they have magical powers. I know it sounds a little generic, but it's really cool just because of the fact that it's so fast-paced, and I still feel like it's got enough elements in there to kind of distinguish itself from a lot of the fantasy that people have read out there. So still definitely give it a try if you guys want more of a fast-paced fantasy. The next fantasy series that I have to recommend is one that a lot of you guys out there know what it is, and that is Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. This is my favorite adult fantasy series right now. It's very dense, so I wouldn't go into this series if you have not read any fantasy at all. I would not start with this one because you're just going to hate fantasy completely if you start with something like this. I would probably try the James Patterson book that I recommended before to kind of ease you into some of the fantasy things. But definitely check this one out if you haven't already. If you're into fantasy and enjoy fantasy, I really, really enjoyed the Game of Thrones series. I've read the first 4. Haven't read the 5th one yet. I know I was going to read it, or it was on my list of books that I needed to read before the end of last year, but it happened and I never got to it. But I really, really enjoyed the first 4. So definitely check this out if you haven't already, if you've been turned off. I know a lot of people don't love it too much, but I would still give it a try. The first book and the 3rd book are definitely my favorite ones in this series. So yeah, I would still check this one out because it's still a really, really cool series. The next series or fantasy that I have to recommend for you guys is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. I've talked about this on my channel lots and lots of times before, so I won't get into too much detail because I will ramble. Definitely check this out if you haven't already. I know a lot of people out there haven't read it. And there's some mixed things, but I would still check this one out. This is more of kind of a beginner fantasy with like Russian themes, which is really, really cool. Love the world in this one, so definitely check it out if you haven't. And if for some reason you have been turned off by the Grisha trilogy, I would just check out Six of Crows, because I feel like Six of Crows takes place in the same world, so you'll get the kind of feeling of being in Leigh Bardugo's world without having to read the Grisha trilogy, which some people I feel don't really enjoy. This one's definitely a superior story with better characters and a better storyline. I would check this one out. Like I said, if you guys have given the Grisha trilogy a try and didn't enjoy it, I would still read this one because I loved this one so much more than the Grisha trilogy, and that's saying something because I love the Grisha trilogy so much. Yeah, like I said, you can experience the same world with different characters and a better storyline, so definitely check this one out if you haven't. And my last fantasy recommendation for you guys is one that I included in one of my other recommendation videos, and that is the Circle Trilogy by Ted Dekker. I know that last time I recommended this book, I didn't mention the 4th book in it, which is green, so it consists of black, red, white, and green, which is kind of a prequel that he came out with years and years later. And kind of fit into it, but I still really enjoyed kind of how this book fit into the original trilogy. This is a Christian fiction fantasy series that I absolutely loved. This was the first fantasy series I feel like I ever read. So this is what really introduced me to the world of fantasy. This is about a guy named Thomas who falls asleep in one world and wakes up in the next one. One is kind of a regressed society that takes place super, super in the future. That feels more of like a high fantasy type world, and then the other world is more modern day. So he'll fall asleep in one world, wake up in the next one, and he's got kind of his memories from both worlds as he's like waking up and falling asleep in each world, and the way kind of these two worlds intertwine and the explanations that you get as the story progresses as to why it is that these things are happening is really, really cool. I really enjoyed it. It's got a somewhat of a time travel element in here also, which I really, really loved. I feel like I can't recommend this series enough. I've mentioned this a whole bunch of times, so definitely check it out if Christian fiction is something that interests you guys. This was an absolutely awesome Christian fiction fantasy series. So yeah, guys, that is it for my fantasy recommendations for the month of January. Comment down below, let me know if you guys have read any of these series and books and what you guys thought about them. Thank you guys all for watching, and I will see you guys all next time.